Hello, hello. Welcome back to the show, Digital Business Evolution. I'm so excited because I have a very special guest with me today. All of our guests are special, but it's even more special when it's someone that I have a personal relationship with. And this man has so much value to add to you, but also he's added so much value in my life and in Mike's life this year. We actually met Josh at our mastermind with our mentor, James. And so earlier this year, we were introduced to Josh, and you will see very quickly how he has energy that absolutely captivates the room. I can't forget when we first went around the room and had to stand up and introduce ourselves at the mastermind holding up a microphone. And this guy just absolutely took over, but not in like an egoic, I'm here, get out of my way type of way, just a oddly grounding but highly energetic way. So super excited to have Josh Coates here. Josh, welcome to the show. I'll do your formal bio for everyone.
Hi, friend. Well, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's great to hear that I'm energetic without being too like A type, because that's always what I never ever want to be taken as the person trying to take over.
Yeah.
I really don't like those vibes. Actually intimidate me and turn me off real bad. So
Yeah.
I'm just a loud person. I can't help it.
Yeah, but there's a different type of loud. So let me introduce you and then we can dive into it. So
Sounds good.
Josh is a #1 Wall Street Journal bestselling author who has mentored over 40,000 entrepreneurs. What? After making only 2 sales in his first year of life coaching, he went on social media and created a brand and then a following that allowed him to walk away from his day job in just 2 years. Since then, he's grown a one-on-one waiting list of over 100 people. He trains thousands of people per month in online training groups and travels the country to speak at events and retreats, which it's such a treat to watch him speak. So if you can get to something that he's doing, make sure you do it. Josh has specialized in taking the psychology of life coaching and turned it into the business basics trainings that have helped his clients create the results in life and business that they desire. You know, it's funny, we read these bios, and a lot of times, especially when you're sitting there while I'm reading it, it's #1 super awkward, but sometimes it's a beautiful reflection. And then the third thing for me is you're so much more than even what this says. So going back to the moment that you introduced yourself, you know, you shared with us at the mastermind a little bit about your background and sort of growing up in a very religious household, and kind of breaking out of that mold and going into something which arguably is the counter opposite, which was rock and roll, right? You're a musician, right.
Yeah,
An incredible drummer from what I've seen in person. But can you just take us back a little? Where did you grow up? What was that background like? And how did you get to life coaching?
Whew, it's gonna get deep and heavy. Is this only a 45-minute show?
I love it.
Well, first of all, just thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it so much, and I have all of the most kind and sincere things to say about you and your husband as well. Love you guys so much, such sweethearts. And that's the most important thing in the world to me. It's like anybody can show up on, not anyone, but certain personality types can show up on microphones and videos and stages, but who you are in person is really the only thing that matters, because everything else is just a show if it's not real. So thank you for the kind words. But I was born here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, grew up in Wichita, Kansas, which Wichita is just the Kansas version of Tulsa. It's a small city, you know, a couple 100,000 people. So I consider myself a city boy, but like a small city boy. I'm, middle of the country. I'm not a country boy at all. I don't know how to work on my cars. I have zero manly things other than my Bronco. And
but I have a question. Did you call Wichita the city?
Yes. Because in Kansas,
it is the city.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I say I'm a small city boy.
Yeah,
because I understand it's not the same as someone who grew up in like Chicago or like LA or New York. But it is weird because when you grow up in Oklahoma or Kansas, people assume you grew up on a farm. And I'm like, I've never been on a farm in my entire life. I've always been in a metropolitan area. It's just that they're much smaller our cities are more like the suburbs of other cities. So I guess you could say I'm a suburban boy. That would probably be more accurate. I'm a suburban boy.
I love it.
But my dad really, 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 so he was grown up, raised by ministers, but like denominational ministers. In his 20s is when he kind of like bought into like the Pentecostal movement that was like a kind of an early charismatic Pentecostal thing that eventually turned into some even more extreme things. Like the older he got, it's like the more circles further he got in. And I do like to clarify, I'm not anti-religion in any way, but the house that I grew up in, we were like, here's an example that will help everyone understand. This is a very extreme way of life. I'm sixth grade, probably fifth or sixth grade, at the mall. We get out of the car and someone else drives by blaring music, and I just start kind of like dancing around, just having fun. And my dad very sternly is like, son, we don't dance to secular music.
Ooh,
Like,
it's very Footloose vibes.
Very, very stern. Like dancing was okay as long as it was to church music. But the second it was to anything that was like not church music, we had this thought and belief that there was God and there was the enemy and there was like no in between. So you were either doing things for God or somehow, even if you didn't realize it, even if you didn't think you were, it was 100% like the devil.
Wow.
And so it was a very fear mentality of like, live this specific way or you are literally serving the devil. I mean, like that's like, we probably wouldn't have actually said that, but the vibe we put out was very much like, if you're not with us, you're serving the devil and can't listen to anything other than church music. We couldn't watch movies that were PG-13.
Wow.
Like even in high school, like me and my brother finally got to the point where we could drive our own car, rent our own movie, but we couldn't tell my dad that we did.
Sure.
We're like, renting stuff like Billy Madison and then like having to hide it.
Wow.
As like 15 and 16-year-olds, So, that led to us doing a lot of stupid stuff,
Sure.
hiding weed up in the roof panels and things like that. We did a lot of things at a really young age just because we weren't allowed to do anything. So anyways, I grew up like that. And kind of in my late teenage years, like kind of like bought into that. I was playing music at church first. That's where I learned instruments, was very into like all of this, wanted to be like a leader in this, was very involved, worked a job full-time that I hated. I detailed cars, played in bands on the weekends, and then also like played at church. So I always kind of was like playing at church and then had like some type of like a side band or something like that. And then at some point I finally was like, you know what? Thankfully I had enough awareness. This is just the entrepreneur brain in me to be like, all of these people say they want to change the world and make a difference, but all they do is have meetings about how to do that. And they never actually go do any of that.
Yeah.
And I'm, I don't know, 25, 26, looking at a bunch of 60-year-olds who are still talking about how God wants to change the world and start some revival movement. These are all church terms, of course, but it was their way of saying we believe that we can make an impact, but still sitting around talking about it. And so as a 25-year-old, I was like, okay, if I continue on this path, that's going to be me in another 25 years.
Wow. What an awareness to have at such a young age.
Yeah, I'm very proud of myself for that. I'm very thankful for that because most people don't think like that, but I do think that's just like the entrepreneur in me, is to always be evaluating everything, thinking about everything, ripping everything apart, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, right? And so I finally was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to like start a rock band and hit the road. And we were not really a Christian rock band, even though I had some definitely had some like spiritual goals in mind, but it was at that point like less about spreading like religion and more about spreading love and hope. And I just wanted to play music around the world and give people like the hope to chase their dreams. And so that is kind of like the foundation of like life coaching, really. But my youngest son went through like 3 different open heart surgeries.
Wow.
And it got to the point where I was like, okay, like, I don't want to be traveling on the weekends. I don't want to be hitting the road. Like, I think there was just this huge shift in me, which is really hard to explain, because I was so sold on wanting to play music for the rest of my life. Like, that was my only out. Like, that was the only thing I had to like put any type of hope in. We were very poor, my job. We were a single income family with 3 kids at the time. Now we have 4. And so like, making $40,000 a year, even in Oklahoma, is not very much when you're a single income family with 3 kids. So we were always on government funded insurance, always had government assistance in things. And so like music feeling like my only hope was like this identity crisis to let go of.
Wow.
Like, who am I now?
Yeah.
You know,
So
like,
what was the thing that sort of, your son had these surgeries that sort of tipped the scale, pushed you over the edge for not putting it behind you because you still play music, but deciding that maybe I'm going to have to do things a little bit differently. And then at what point were you like, I'm now a life coach? Or how did you start getting your first clients? I mean, you've worked with so many MLM network marketers. How'd you get into that field? Just kind of bridge the gap for us of how you got to where you are today.
So I literally was reading like a magazine article of the guitar player from Creed, which, is a band that everyone can laugh about. But this article changed my life, so I got to be thankful. And he was talking about when Creed broke up, he didn't know what was coming next. So he just was like, you know what, whatever it is, I'm going to be the best version of myself for it. And he started he hired like a tutor and started practicing like 10 hours a day.
Wow.
And I read that and I was like, I think I'd even read it a couple years ago. And it was just like popped up in my brain. I was like, if I don't know what's next, I just need to dig in and become like a better version of me to prepare for whatever is next. So I literally pulled out the podcast app on my phone and just downloaded hours of podcasts. And instead of listening to music while I worked all day, I listened to podcasts all day.
What were some of your favorites?
Like Lewis Howes was
same.
Oh my God. I loved Lewis Howes.
What year was this about?
This was like 2013.
Same. Every single day on my way to work and getting ready and going to the gym. That was it.
New.
Yeah, it was.
Maybe his first or second year doing a podcast. Like I remember reaching out to Lewis Howes for advice.
Same.
About my podcast, and he answered.
Yes. I used to talk to him in the DMs all the time.
It's hilarious. So yeah, that's so fun.
Shout out to Lewis.
Yep, shout out Lewis.
We love you.
You started a lot of
he really did
adventures. Yeah,
he really did.
So through him I found people like Grant Cardone. I feel like through Lewis I found all the other people that I would go listen to, And at some point I ran across John Maxwell.
Oh.
And I really just loved everything he was saying. He has kind of like this grandfather vibe about him where you feel like you just sit at his feet for like 8 years, right? And then randomly an ad popped up for like his certification. And I remember looking at that ad and saying, sorry, as I throw my water bottle lid. It's my fidget spinner.
So angry over there.
I was just like, I'm going to do that one day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go sign up for that because I was poor. I didn't, it was more of like, oh, one day. I don't know if your clients ever like, oh,
of course.
I have your training on my vision board.
On my vision board.
That's how I felt. I was like, this is, going to be something I do one day. And then literally a couple of weeks later at church, one of the pastors asked me like what I wanted to do with my life. And I mentioned, the podcast I was listening to. I mentioned John Maxwell and his certification. And they're like, oh, we know someone that like is in that certification. They like,
oh, I just got chills
on the Presidential Advisory Council. And so they introduced me to him. And I ended up like using my tax return to sign up like literally like 2 months later. And then I was just like, okay, I just spent a lot of money. I know that I need something to work because I hate detailing cars so bad. I'm all in. I was like, I'm going to literally do everything John Maxwell tells me to do. I do think is a really great principle to grab onto. I don't know. Sometimes, you're like, oh, that was really smart of me. I don't know where I got that from, but I was like, I've never started a business. I've never known anything about business. So I'm going to give myself 5 years to literally learn and apply everything I learn. And I'm not allowed to look up. Like when 5 years is over, I'm like, you have my permission to look up and see how it's going. And if nothing has worked and nothing is going well, then you can quit.
I want to just acknowledge you for a second on that and bring up a point for the listeners, because a lot of times people will give it 12 weeks, maybe 6 months. And of course, we know the story of how it goes. It doesn't work out. They throw up their arms and they quit and they walk away. But so often we put 4 years into, and I'm not shooting down traditional education. I was a teacher, but we'll put 4 years into going to college or university, or 6 years. And we don't bat an eye at the fact that we're probably not going to have a job or an ROI in that field for many, many years to come. And so I just want to acknowledge you, but also point out, like, wow, you gave yourself 5 years, which is a traditional degree and maybe a master's. And you allowed yourself the time and space to learn the things. And you probably, spoiler alert, were actually making money before the 5 years was up, right? But you really did allow yourself the space as opposed to this quick overnight success. I'm going to throw my arms up and throw the towel in and quit if it doesn't work within the first 6 months. And so just to reframe for everybody listening, like it really does take time. And we're so bought into this story. And again, I'm not trashing traditional education, but we're bought into the story of, put 4, 5, 6, 8 years into schooling before you can actually start working in the field. And so I love that you sort of took that same approach with your business.
Yeah. I mean, I was smart enough to know how stupid I was. And I think that that's really important. I think it's really important to be smart enough to realize just how big of a challenge this is going to be. I was like, I'm not stupid enough to think that after detailing cars and playing in rock bands, I'm just going to become a life coach and everything is just going to like work out for me right away. I was like, anything I've ever done in life, every instrument I've ever learned, every sport that I've ever played, like literally everything I've ever done, I'm a slow learner.
Yeah.
But I am one of those people that like, once I finally figure it out, once it clicks, it's good. Like I can do it forever. Like I can still to this day at, 38, almost 39, go out and shoot a basketball and I'm pretty good. And I don't play.
I mean, somebody was doing 400-pound leg press this morning. I don't know who it was, but I saw that on your Instagram.
I was pretty proud of that. That was nice.
That was nice PR.
Like the thing is, like, if you put in enough work and time, eventually it becomes your new normal.
Yeah.
But for it to become your new normal, you do have to be willing to put in the kind of time and energy it takes. And, obviously at that point, I didn't even know how much of it was like psychology. But now in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, it literally takes that long to like reprogram your thought structure.
Yeah.
Not to mention what it takes for, your body to adapt, your skills to adapt. Like, posting on social media is like 5 skill sets.
Yeah.
You got to be a photographer. You got to be a copywriter. You got to be a researcher. Like there's so many different skills that you have to develop to be an entrepreneur. I think the greatest thing going for me was just realizing how far I had to go and being okay with that.
Yeah.
Just saying like, that's just what it is.
And it's not for everybody. We talk about that all the time on here. Entrepreneurship is trendy, it's trending, and everybody wants to do it or they think they do. And a lot of people get into it and realize, wow, I actually don't want to learn all these different skill sets. Right. Because to your point, posting one thing is actually wearing, 5, 10 different hats that I believe we sort of chip away, not mastering, because I don't know if you ever fully master, but really learning and becoming, what would the word be? It's something with a C that I'm thinking of. Anyway, becoming good enough in that area before you move on to the next. So you mentioned psychology, and I'm really excited because this is the direction I wanted to go. So one of my favorite things about you and the way that you show up is the way that you use psychology in a positive way, because we could be using psychology in a negative way where it's manipulation and marketing and fear tactics and false sense of urgency and flashy marketing, selling lifestyles that might not be true, which you do not do, but you do use psychology specifically in sales. And I've heard you talk before about the belief bridge. So can you break that down for us?
Yeah. So the belief bridge is kind of this really cool. I really like visuals and I like step by step. It like, to me, it's
we're family. Same.
Yeah, absolutely. Being an artist, I see the world very abstract, but for the sake of a business, I need it broken down into some clear steps and like a roadmap, So the belief bridge is like my roadmap for how to use psychology to connect with your most ideal client. So it starts off like this, and maybe this will be a good way to get people to go watch the YouTube version of this because the visual of this is kind of powerful. Okay. So I want you to imagine we've got 2 mountain peaks here. Okay. One is in my right hand. One is in my left hand. Okay. We are on one mountaintop because we've gone through a journey. Like me as a life coach, I read a bunch of books. I listened to a bunch of trainings. I literally had to reprogram myself in the path to learning how to help others. If you're a health and fitness coach, you usually went through some type of a health and fitness transformation, but all of us to get where we are today had to go through some type of personal transformation, which literally puts us on a different mountain. Okay.
Sure.
Our ideal client is still back on that other mountaintop that we used to be at. And so really what we have is we have this valley that separates us from them. And what most people do is they stand on their mountain and say, look what I have.
Right,
Look
just
how
shouting.
amazing this is. I work with a lot of health and fitness coaches, and a lot of them sell, some type of like a protein shake or a superfood shake. And so I like to joke with them. I'm like, you're standing on this mountain over here going, this has 150 superfoods. And they're like over on this other mountain going, what? What's a superfood? Why in the world would I care about a superfood?
Oh, it's so true.
Over here, like thinking about what's hurting them right now. And one of my favorite examples of this is like, I went through a shoulder injury. I'm still recovering from it. So like literally I'm sitting on the couch and the positioning of my arm just gets awkward, like it doesn't really just sit comfortably anywhere. So me and my wife will be cuddled on the couch. We're cuddlers and watching a movie. And I'm literally in the back of my head thinking, where can I put my shoulder that it's not going to hurt? How can I rest my arm? Do I need a pillow up under this? Do I need to put it on the shoulder rest? That is a constant thing playing in the back of my head, even when I'm not consciously aware of it. So if you ran a Facebook ad or had an Instagram reel or sent me an email that said, take this pill to ease your shoulder pain and get back your strength, or like something like that, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take it right now. Like, yeah. I don't care what it costs. I will take it. I don't care if it's a pill or if it's like 7 days of exercises, like whatever it is, I'm in. If it's a pill, unfortunately, you can charge more because if it doesn't come with any effort, I'll literally pay more. But the reality is, if you can grab my attention about the thing that's already in my head, I'm in. Let's go to the next step. Let's hear what you have to offer.
Yeah.
But if you are like, do you know what you really need? You really need to have proper alignment, and you need to be adjusted because it's good for your long-term health and it will help your ligaments and your bones. I'm just like, what are you even talking about right now? I don't care.
Yeah.
And this is what we do. We find out along the way the things that are needed to make a transformation, and then we preach these needs at people who just have desires. And so we're literally, I like to say, when we do it this way, I call it convincing sales. And when we do it, we actually make the gap bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And when we do get signups, it's only because we made so many freaking posts or so many follow-ups or so many sales sequences that the person finally was just like, you know what? I know I need help, so I'm just going to jump off of this mountain into this valley. It literally feels like they're jumping to their death in order to trust you. That's why a lot of people are like, how come it takes, and then we get this whole, what's the compound effect? If you just keep showing up and showing up and showing up. And so I do believe in the compound effect, but I believe that it has to be the right actions being taken, right? If I'm doing the right things to my shoulder every single day, over time, it seems like it's too long, but over time, it will fix and heal, right?
Sure.
But if I'm doing the wrong things, it doesn't matter if I do it every day. I could do it for like the next 9 years.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many people who've gotten like stuck in this like idea of just show up every day, just be here a year from now. All these like catchy, witty phrases that sound nice in theory, but don't make any logical sense. Like if my kid is struggling with math, trying to figure out algebra, it's like, Dad, struggling so much with this. I'm like, you know what? Just keep showing up.
Right.
Hey, just
do it again
here a year from now. Okay.
Yeah.
If you do it over and over, small things repeated daily get you great results.
Sure.
And my kid would be like, but
banging his head.
How to solve for X? I'm like, don't worry, son. Just so do you see how it doesn't make sense? Now, if I teach him the right technique and I properly explain it and I help him to understand how it works, then I do believe that with work and time and energy, 3 months from now, he'll be really good at algebra instead of really sucky, or at least a lot better at algebra.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
think when it
such a
comes
good
to
example.
sales, like nobody's getting any better. So they're just like, well, I guess I just have to talk to more people,
Yeah. Or
send more
louder.
emails, I have to do more launches. I
Yeah.
have to try to get my reels to go viral. So we're chasing all of these things to try to create more noise.
Yeah.
We're trying to do interruption marketing when we could be doing invitational marketing.
Mm,
It's like
there's
way
a
more chill.
line. There's a
Like way more
line. Way
chill.
more chill. I love it. Something that we actually did this year by, the loving encouragement of this mastermind was we dropped from our signature program. We would typically launch 4 times a year. And in 2020, we launched it 5 just because of demand. Super grateful for that. But this year we went from 4 launches down to 2. We also went from like a super chill, like 3-week open cart to a 5-day open cart.
Nice.
And our revenue increased. We had bigger launches this year than, previously. And because we were able to take the energon cubes, as James talks about, we were able to take our energy and our focus and our time as a team and pour it into the runway leading up to it and pour it into things like messaging and the belief bridge. And so by doing that, it was not less effort, but it was less yelling from the mountaintop. It was, so many people will just get louder. Like you said, I'll put up more posts, I'll send more emails, and more does not always equal better.
Right.
So I mean, it's such a huge point to make that messaging, everyone eye rolls, but messaging is really, really important. And when you understand the psychology behind messaging, it is a lighter lift because to your point, do you really care about alignment and structure of your spine and chiropractic, whatever, or do you just care that your shoulder gets better?
Totally.
And this I would love your opinion on because we have a lot of clients and a lot of listeners who are almost fearful of using traditional pain point marketing. They don't want to sound negative. They don't want to lean into people's pains. So what's your approach there? And even when you were giving us an example, you kind of did it in a pleasure point marketing way. So how do you navigate that?
Well, I think it can be done one of 2 ways. So one, I like to call out to either the results that person wants and or the limiting beliefs they have around those things. And my favorite thing to do with the limiting beliefs is, okay, so this is a trend that I see on social media that is like a really big turnoff to me.
Yeah.
And that is taking things that your actual clients have said or people in the inbox have literally said to you and then like calling them out with a reel. So it's like, when people say they don't have enough time, and then you're like, it's just like, okay, so you just took literally this as a life coach, it's like a beautiful space to me. When you let me in your head, this is like a sacred place.
Yeah.
And if I take that and shame it, what could possibly be worse than that? That's one of the reasons I got so burnt by the religious circles. Like, I thought I was in a safe place, but then there was just so much shame.
Well, and you're creating so much psychological unsafety for other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's when it can kind of become like this bullying situation where, people might end up joining you, but you bullied them in. So like how long, like A, are they there for the right reason? B, will they show up? And then C, is this like what was actually like good for them if they had to be bullied in? So what I like to do is kind of the opposite. When someone has a limiting belief, I like to ask, what in society gave them that limiting belief? And how do I call out that person so that my most ideal client is never the bad guy? The person that gave them the wrong information is the bad guy.
So powerful. Can you give us an example?
Yeah. So, I mean, like literally in my webinar, one of the first things that I call out is the mindset coach. And I am a mindset coach, but the way I call it, I actually use the compound effect coach is another one that I bring up, which we already talked about, but I bring up the mindset coach. I'm like, some of you have been doing this business for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and people keep telling you if you're not having success, it's just because you don't believe enough. You just don't believe enough. So go read another book, go do another podcast, go do more affirmations, and it's just kind of this, like, it turns into this cycle that actually starts to work against you because you keep thinking there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And I use the math analogy again. I'm like, what if I just told my kid, hey, I'm sorry you're struggling with that, but that just means you need to believe more. Like, let's do some affirmations. Let's, get at peace with our inner selves. And let's do now, all of these things are totally fine and even great things to do, but without technique, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So that's my way of like letting my audience, who I know has been over-taught mindset so much, know, hey, guess what? That actually is an important thing, but they convinced you that there's something wrong with you. And I'm here to release that pressure.
Yeah.
And let you know you're not messed up. You don't have internal issues. I mean, we all do because we're human, but like you're not some special person who doesn't have what it takes because you couldn't believe enough.
Yeah.
It's just that no one's taught you the technique of how to solve for X.
DBE crew, are you writing this down? Are you writing this down? Because this is huge. It really is. It's empowering the ideal client rather than making them wrong or bad or broken. And it's such a nuanced, small little tweak that you can make where you're not targeting them, but you're actually helping them see something. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And then once you, so I like to call it to the thing I know they already want.
Sure.
Okay. And then I like to criticize the person that already took their money that left them naked with nothing. Okay. Yeah. And then I like to introduce them to the thing. So I'm using, and I use that analogy very intentionally because with math, like there is some technique you have to know. So sure. I love to use stories and analogies. I call them pivots and angles. And it's essentially taking you outside of the thing that we're currently talking about to help you see a universal principle that we can then bring back to the thing that you're currently emotional about. If I were to try to do it about the thing we're talking to, it doesn't matter because you're emotionally attached. And this is something that I do in life coaching. If someone's struggling with their business, I might say, hey, what if your son or your daughter was like trying out for the team or like trying to get into a college, but they said, I don't feel like I'm as smart as the other kids, or I don't feel like what would you say to them? And immediately they're like, well, I would tell them it doesn't matter. You can have anything you want. If you believe it, like, I'm just like, oh, okay. That's very interesting. Why are we not believing that about ourselves?
Yeah.
But I can't just say, well, what do you believe about yourself?
Yeah.
Because they're emotionally attached to that situation, right? So I got to take them out here first.
Yeah, it's kind of like the triangulation that we do when we're having a conversation with a coworker, with a loved one, where you separate yourselves from the challenge or the issue. So there's 3 points to the triangle, and it's not you are the problem. It's like the problem exists above us, right? And how can we together work to figure out the problem?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the pivot and the angle. And then I introduce them to the one thing they need, which a lot of people would call like the domino belief.
Sure.
And this is the thing that like I need you to buy into. From there, I have what I call, sorry for trigger words. I don't mean to trigger anyone with this. It's just, well, it kind of proves its own point with the name. Okay.
Sure.
I call them cocaine pillars.
I was like, where is he going with this? Okay. So, I'm into it.
Every program has like 3 pillars to it, and usually it's like mindset and routines and all of that stuff is so true. Okay. But I coined this phrase, but the principle actually comes from our mentor. I was walking him through one of my webinars and I brought up mindset. And I was like, and don't worry, I'm going to, be like, I know you've heard it before, but I have this other blah, blah, blah. And he was like, Josh, I agree with everything you're saying, but don't you dare say mindset. And I was like, he's so right. Because the second you hear something you've already heard, all of the limiting beliefs you've had about the last 100 times you tried come with it. So the second I say anything that you have already tried, so if you've already tried funnels, if you've already bought into, Russell Brunson and got ClickFunnels and set up like 32 funnels, but then you never finished it or it never worked.
Yeah.
If I'm like, okay, if you're a life coach and you want to grow your business, here's step 1. You got to have a funnel. The very second I do that, doors closed.
Yep. Shut you out.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how many other good things I said before that. It's over. So what I teach people to do, take whatever pillars you have in your program and create coined phrases for them.
I love that.
So like the belief bridge, I bring that up and you're like, what's that? Now, if I said have better messaging, it'd be like, no,
I've tried that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. Everybody tells me to do it. No one teaches me how.
Yeah, so you have to give very specific things that, one, sound like a new concept or idea, two, sound like, and there should be this behind it regardless, but sound like there is some type of backed science behind it,
Sure.
or like an art behind it. It needs to sound measurable, and it basically just gives them like an open door to just like lean in and actually hear you out, because you have good things to say. Everyone listening, you have good things to say. People need what you have, but you have to know how to convey what it is in a way that doesn't shut them down and close them off and gets them to lean in and say, what's that?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? How do I do that?
It's so interesting how the human brain too, we get so drawn in by curiosity. So it's like we could say, diet or keto, paleo, vegan, right? All these different things. And to your point, the experience that we've had links in our brain and it connects to whatever experience we previously had. But if you called it not the Jess approach, because that's not catchy, but if you called it the whatever, come up with a name, then instantly curiosity and intrigue now has us lean in and listen. And so you're sort of changing the sign on your door to get people to open it and be open to it. I love that.
Yeah. And that's, and this is actually a lesson I did learn from Russell Brunson, is it's gotta feel different.
Yeah.
It can't feel like it's a little bit better of a version of the thing I already tried. It's got to feel like this is a brand new experience, because that gives me a brand new opportunity. And it allows people to believe maybe the last 10 times I tried wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
And the reality is sometimes it was, sometimes it was.
Sure.
But they're not going to try again if they can't release and let go of the guilt and the shame that came with those experiences and feel like, okay, that's why January 1 is so magical, right? It's not magical. It's Monday,
just January 1.
Whatever, but it makes people feel like this is a brand new opportunity. And that feeling alone gets people that have never set goals in their entire life to be like, I gotta write down some goals. Like I gotta do something with myself this year.
Yeah.
Like, that's random. Where'd that come from? Well, the fresh start gave them the hope that there could be something new that could happen.
Yeah. So I could literally talk to you all day. I want to be mindful of our time. And I want to sort of put a bow on something and go backwards. And it's the perfect segue, because you were just bringing up sort of this clean slate, this fresh start. You glazed before over reprogramming, and you talked about reprogramming your own brain, and you needed time to do that. And it took more time than you thought. And I know I personally have thoughts and feelings around Post-it note affirmations. I've used many of them in my life, and they generally don't work. And I believe because there's not reprogramming that's actually happening. You're just reading something, and it gets to a point where you don't even read it. It's on your mirror, and you're like pitching your head to the side so that like it's not in the way anymore. Yeah. Can you just break down for our audience your kind of definition of, or steps of how to reprogram? Because it's like messaging. Everyone says it's important and you should do it, but not many people are actually teaching what the heck is reprogramming.
So I teach in my life coach certification this thing I call head versus heart. It's really interesting because it's my own coined thing that I kind of like made up.
So it's mindset.
Yeah, exactly. So
I see what you did.
After going through my life coach certification that I went through and learning everything that I learned, and then reflecting on what was happening in the religious circle that I grew up in, I saw there was a very distinct difference as to how we went about finding truth. So I created this thing called head versus heart, where we have these two voices on the inside of us. One is our head, which is how we have been programmed from all of our past experiences, the people that we've been surrounded by. It's a machine. Now, it's not bad to have this machine because it saves our life. It is put there to both automate and protect us. The automate is the part that can be dangerous if we don't know how to properly program it. But the protection is pretty nice. Like, I do like to be able to jump out of the way if a car is driving at me or whatever, right? Haven't had to do that many times, but just in case. Our heart is the thing that growing up in church, we tried to talk about, but we didn't understand psychology well enough to truly get what it actually was.
Mm.
Now, I think, kind of had an idea of what it was, but this is what I should say. This is how I want to say it. I think we really kind of had this great idea of what it could be, but we didn't know how to access it because we only knew how to go through our head where our programming was. So our heart, to me, this is just my personal beliefs, is our eternal presence. It is constant connection to our creator, whether you call that universe or God, doesn't matter to me. I believe it is this infinite source of truth, and it is the real version of us. So in my heart, and the difference is if you hear someone say, I feel like, that's head. If you hear someone say, I just know, that's heart. Notice the difference there, where one is I feel, meaning there is some type of a trigger happening. It doesn't necessarily have to be good or bad, but it's not your truth. It's just kind of how you're responding to what's happening. When someone says, I know, and I used to do this all the time. I kid you not, going back to my first year as a life coach, I quit almost every other day. But I had this thing that I would do with myself. I would say, I feel like this might be wrong because I'm not following the path of like my parents. I feel so guilty about this. I feel so ashamed. But I just, somewhere deep inside, I know that like this is something I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so there was this conflict inside. And this is why most people self-sabotage, if you will. This is why most people quit. This is why most people lose hope or lose strength, whatever that is, because of this internal battle. Now, I didn't have words for it back then. But as I would life coach people, I would start to see the difference between, I started calling them their stories. I started seeing the difference between the story they made up about the situation versus what they truly believed deep down once we dug far enough.
Yeah.
And so the head versus heart is kind of this really cool way of understanding what's happening on the inside, because you don't, self-awareness is everything. If you don't know what's happening, how can you change anything?
Yep.
And so what I teach people to do is to get through all of the head stuff, which takes some coaching sometimes or some journaling or whatever, and get down to what you actually know. And then you actually create affirmations off of those heartfelt truths, because that is your power. That is your internal spirit. This is like your eternal wisdom. And once you get down to that, that is your superpower as a human. And that, I like to say that your head likes to play dirty. It's like it knows how to sabotage you, right?
Yeah.
Like for moms, for instance, I work with a ton of moms. There's this thing called mom guilt, where it's like, I feel guilty for having goals that take me away from my family. And so I'll ask them to dig a little bit deeper. Well, why did you want to have a business in the first place? I mean, if it's so terrible for your family, like, why did you even want to have this? Well, I used to struggle with this, and then I overcame this. And then I was just like, you know what? I just know there's so many other women out there struggling with the same thing. I want to help them so bad. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, okay, so you said you have some daughters, right? When your daughters grow up, do you want them to feel like the only thing they're allowed to do with their life is cook and clean and take care of their kids and get them to school? Oh my God, I would never want that for my daughter. No, I want her to chase her dreams. Okay, so we just found your truth.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I will attach affirmations emotionally to things you care the most about to make sure it can combat the things that your head is trying to trigger. Your head is
so
trying
good.
to say, I can't do this because of my family. And I want to do the opposite and say, because I want my daughters to grow up and change the world, I'm choosing today to set the example for who they can become.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
So much better than I'm a rock star. I can do this. I'm powerful. Like, none of that matters because it's just bouncing off of all of the pre-programming that's told you otherwise.
Well, it's generic. It's not specific to you and the programming or reprogramming that you would desire or need. Oh, it's so good. Oh my goodness. I really could talk all day. Can we do a couple rapid fire questions?
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
All right. So you've played a lot of instruments. Which is your favorite?
Songwriting the guitar, because like people can sing along.
Yeah.
And you can play stuff that people are like familiar with.
Yeah.
But if we're just talking about, okay, Josh, we're going to go like jam for an hour, give me the drums, because
Awesome.
the drums is all feelings. I don't have to think about which key we're in. I don't have to think about, oh, do I know the riff for that part? If I've heard a song, for the most part, I can play it. And it's just so much fun.
That is so cool. And I got to witness that live. We were out at a bar and you had asked the band, you asked the drummer if you could jump in for a couple songs and they let you. And it was so cool to watch. That is not something that I have inside of me. I don't have the musical talent. What are you currently reading or listening to?
Ooh, I'm currently listening to an audio book. It's called Magnetic Marketing.
Cool. Love it.
And it's funny because it's literally the belief bridge.
Amazing.
Like straight up. It is, but in different terminology.
Yeah. If I were to hypothetically give you $50,000 tomorrow that you had to use for the business, to invest in the business, on the business, in the business, how would you use it? And you could break it apart.
So I have like a whole ad strategy that I kind of do, which is, I call it omnipresence. I have motivation ads that I put out that are just like, go click on my Instagram today and you'll see my whole ad strategy. Basically I have a couple posts that are calling out to my ideal person, but just in like a fun way, not like oh, come work with me. It's more like, life coaches, if you're struggling, here's what I went through. Here's how I got to my first 6, things like that. Once they click on it, I retarget them with all of my best sales stories and analogies. So like the math one is literally one of the reels you will see. Then I retarget all of my engagement for like my big workshops and webinars. That way I'm just, it's like I'm instead of just going to someone who's never heard of me and saying,
you're creating awareness.
Yeah, you can. If you do the belief bridge right, you can, but you can get it a lot cheaper when someone's already familiar with your name and your face. So I would just honestly go spend it all on that. I don't really spend money on other stuff in my business other than advertising to find new people.
I love it. So before I ask you our final question, where can everybody find you? What do you have going on right now? What's new and exciting? Let us know.
So you can find me on Instagram, _pushcoach. And then of course you can go to my website and I give away my Wall Street Journal bestseller, which was called The Best Version of You. The whole book is about the head versus the heart. Like that's what the book is about. I give away those for free on my website if you just pay for shipping. And then like every 3 to 6 months, I do a really big workshop teaching on the belief bridge and how to implement it in your business. We've always got a link for that at joshcoates.com. There'll be like a big button that's like register for my next 6-figure workshop.
Awesome. We could put that in the show notes too. Love it. So good. I'm excited to have everybody get their hands on your book. So we named the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe that we're always evolving and growing, and it's not a pivot, it's just an evolution. And we also believe that our businesses are an extension of us, right? They grow to the capacity at which we grow and the problems that we're willing and able to manage. So what is your next personal or business evolution?
Ooh, well, I'm in the middle of it right now. So it's such a fun question. So I served a lot of network marketers, tons of health and fitness coaches. They were the people that kind of found me first and wanted to spread the word. So like I let them. And I love working with anyone who's an entrepreneur who wants to make a difference. But last year I launched my own life coach certification.
So cool.
Yes, I love it so much. I think we've certified around like 90 people in the last year.
Wow.
And so kind of like my next evolution is creating more and more resources for life coaches.
So cool.
I don't feel like there's anyone doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know that
I don't know that I've seen that.
Seen an ad that was like, if you are a life coach who wants to grow, like it's always a little bit more generalized to people who launch courses or your next webinar or like whatever. It's never for life coaches. And I do think that we have something a little bit more specific. Not that it's completely different than what anyone else in the world does, but anyone who offers like a one-on-one service does have something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like the way you build that business is just so revolutionarily different than anything else in the world. But I do think it's like really special when you get to learn from someone who does what you do. I mean, like,
I love it.
The difference between learning from James versus the mentor that I had before that I loved. I adored him. I still love him. I still think he's amazing and great. but there was a lot of spirituality in the group and not so much, here's how I did my launch. Here's my email sequence. And so I think the more specific of a person you can learn from, the quicker you can just grab stuff that's like copy and paste versus, okay, that was great, but like I sell something totally different. So like, how do I reword all of that and make it make sense for me? So that's
cool. I love that. I'm so excited to watch it all unfold, and I get to see some of the behind the scenes. So I feel super lucky. Well, this has been absolutely incredible, to no surprise. I'm so grateful for all of your wisdom and all of your little tidbits that you've given us. And so listeners, if we could always do the best gift back to our guests that come on, take a screenshot. If you love this episode, share it out on social. Make sure that you tag Josh at JoshCoates_push coach and tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what some of your takeaways were. Go ahead, head to the show notes to grab the link, get yourself a free copy of the book, just pay for shipping, and learn how you can sort of build this belief bridge with your ideal clients and the business and offers that you create so we can impact more people in this world. As always, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.